students are gone, but you are still here. And we know how you feel because you are done. But you have so much work to do to get ready for tomorrow. Good afternoon, podcast listeners everywhere. Welcome to After the Bell, a Stunt Brothers production. A podcast that gets inside the life of a teacher and provides a wellness guide for being prepared to take on this most challenging of professions. I'm Martin Stuvel.
And I'm Roy Hunt. And we share your pain, having taught a combined 70 years. The guarantee of this podcast is to make you laugh, make you think, and give you at least one little nugget that you can use in the classroom. So get out your marking, organize your supplies, or just pour yourself a coffee.
I want something stronger.
And listen, engage, and interact with After the Bell, a podcast for you, the hard-working, dedicated teacher who wants free lesson plans, free advice, and a free meal.
Okay, Roy, but I'm not paying for anything more than McDonald's. Well, Mr. Hunt, episode number 12.
Number 12. And I don't know where to go from here, so we're to talk about that. Yes, it's episode number 12.
Yeah, no, and we've been doing really well, getting a lot of listeners, and our guests are really getting
we're getting a lot
good
of
response.
Guests. A lot of people who maybe were reluctant at first, but have heard our some of our episodes and have changed their minds. And I think have.
Said, I want to be on their podcast.
I want to be on the podcast. And then it seems like suddenly we have a whole lot of people we have to interview.
I know. Some of them will have to wait for season 2, I think. But
maybe.
And we're really hoping to kind of expand beyond even British Columbia, beyond Canada, but get some North American and even some European input and other educators around the world, Australia.
Yes.
It will be wonderful to be able to reach out to the whole wide world and just get a unified view of what's going on and what works,
on in the classroom,
what doesn't work, and how we can support teachers.
Yep.
How you been doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
The weather here has been unbelievable. We have some wonderful clear skies, sunny mornings, usually around -4, -5.
When you listen to this in March, around that, March, April, it will be you listening to it at a time when the weather is getting towards spring, of course, but we are talking kind of in the middle of the winter still.
That's right. And I hate to say this, but we need some moisture.
We do. It's been a dry January.
Yeah, we have.
I know people like dry Januaries. It's often a thing people do after Christmas,
but this is a different dry.
It really is.
We need some snow.
Yes.
Or some rain, and it seems like the number one place in the world for snow right now is in Japan.
In Japan, they've had, I think, more snow than anywhere
in the world.
But even Florida got a good dump of snow.
Yes. Houston,
yes.
People throwing snowballs.
Yes.
Some people have seen snow for the first time in their lives.
Yes, but not here in Vancouver, where we usually get a lot of rain, and we all welcome rain now. We look upon it differently, I think, realizing our forests need the moisture.
Yes.
But you're maybe planning to head off by the time people listen to this episode. You might not even be in this part of the world.
Well, it's interesting because in March I am going away. I'm traveling to Iceland.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, many people in the wintertime think about going to a warmer climate, but no, I'm going to Iceland in March.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to it.
I've heard great things about Iceland.
Yes.
Yeah. Quite the place, I feel.
We have 8 days, and I'm looking forward to that very much. And you're also going.
I am. Around that time, I'm heading off to Africa. I'm actually returning to Africa. I was there for 2 months in 1994.
Okay.
And my daughter's tired of this story, but I have to tell it on the air. In 94, we said to ourselves as we camped out in the Serengeti and the African savannah that if we ever had a daughter, we would name her Savannah. 4 years later, 1998, she was born. And her whole life, she's heard this story. And her whole life, she's heard that I will take her back to Africa. And she is going to start law school in September. So this was the chance, right? She's 26 years old, 27 by the time you hear this podcast. And we are heading off to Africa so I can have her hear me tell that story over and over again.
Over again.
But I'm really excited to bring her there, and I think is very excited too.
Yes. Well, not only has she heard the story, but she'll be living the story.
She will. She will. Be part of her storytelling now, I hope. Right?
Yes. Yes.
But today's episode, we were thinking we'd focus on diversity and inclusion. And I think we'll have many episodes on this topic because it is kind of the hot topic.
Yes, it
right?
is.
Because we all believe in it, but we want it done right? So it works for all the partners, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so it's something that, because we can look at it from the lens of the classroom teacher, but there are a lot of partner groups that are involved in this. So how can we make this a successful experience for all the partner groups? And if you and I could give our opinions about it, but I think it's really important that we find some people who can give us a more factual way of looking at it.
I agree. And that way we see it from the perspective not only teachers, but the student, the parents, and other educators in the system, right? So that is the way we meet diversity and inclusion.
Yes. What's that sound?
What's that sound? Oh, there's the sound of the homework board.
Yes.
Let's have a look and see what's up there.
Well, again, you're very happy, I can tell, because there is no homework on the homework
I love these
board.
days.
And also, it looks like we're going on another field trip.
We are going on a field trip. We're going to meet another trustee of North Vancouver, Cyndi Gerlach, and we're going to talk about inclusion and diversity. And I got to know Cyndi quite well when I was president of the North Van Teachers Association. I found her to be a very strong advocate for inclusion and diversity. We didn't always agree on things because I, of course, sometimes had to see it from a teacher's perspective.
That's right.
In terms of making it
the
work.
The lens that you have to view things from.
But I always valued her perspective, and I think we always had really good discussions. So I'm really excited about this because
I'm really looking forward to this.
It won't necessarily be one where we go, yeah, you're right. But she brings a really good viewpoint to this, and I really welcome her being on our program.
Well, I look forward to this trip.
Today we are really delighted to have Trustee Cyndi Gerlach with us. Thank you for joining us on our After the Bell podcast.
My pleasure.
We always start, before we get into the nitty-gritty, a little bit of an icebreaker, right?
Yes.
Just to lighten things up. So, Roy, you going to start with that?
I'll start with that. It's ABC 1, 2, 3. So here we go. A, recess or lunch.
Recess.
B, red or blue.
Red.
C, winter or summer.
Ooh. Spring.
I like that, yeah. It's coming soon.
Yes.
Okay, number 1, fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
2, apple or banana?
Apple.
3, who was your favorite teacher and why?
Mr. Bennett.
Okay. Tell us about Mr. Bennett.
Mr. Bennett was my law teacher and my history teacher. And Mr. Bennett saw me. It was, he wasn't the first teacher, but he was the teacher that saw me as me, recognized who I was as a student, because I never really quite fit in. And the other thing that I really liked about him was he made it really clear at the beginning of the class that he was never going to take attendance. He didn't care whether you passed or failed. If you didn't show up and you couldn't do the work, that wasn't on him. So he really sort of was teaching us to be responsible for our own actions, right? Because everybody... So I went to Handsworth, and we were on a modular schedule, which meant that kids were always in the hallways. So there was more opportunity for skipping class because
Somebody would be there.
There was always somebody, right? And so he was really about, this is your education, not mine. And so I really valued that. as a teacher. And I do want to say, and then we had another teacher, Mr. Evans. I had him for biology, and his thing was, there's no such thing as a wrong answer, but you're being foolish if you don't ask questions. So I always blame him for all the questions I ask.
Or thank him, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one little extra one. I'm a real Beatle fan. So who's your favorite Beatle?
Who's my favorite Beatle?
Yeah. Do you have one?
I do.
Okay.
I do. It's actually Ringo.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I love Ringo. Yeah.
Because he was the oddball.
Right, yeah.
He wasn't the original Beatle.
Yeah,
He was kind of, and he had to try and fit in, and he had a very different kind of way of looking at life. So, yeah.
And he just had a #1 album, his new album. It's a country album.
Oh.
He's 84 years old, and it's #1 on all the charts.
I'm going to have to go and listen
it's really
to
good. T-Bone Burnett wrote and produced it with him, and it's really
okay.
good. Yeah.
Oh, good.
So there.
Good.
Okay. How long have you been a trustee in Vancouver?
In North Vancouver?
North Vancouver. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
North
no.
Vancouver.
I was elected in 2011, so I have been a trustee for 13 years.
13 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And what inspired you to become a trustee?
The truth.
Of course.
Always the truth.
Always the truth. What inspired me, I was on, well, I ran in 2008. I didn't get elected. But I have two adult children now, but back then they were students in the school system that were autistic or that are autistic. And I really was struggling in trying to get them accepted for who they were and getting an education just like everybody else. And I advocated, and I really felt that staff started to tune me out. And so I thought, in order to make the changes that I wanted to see happen, I had to get to where policy was written. And the only way to do that is to become a trustee. So I basically was, you know what, if I really truly want to help change the structure, I had to get to where the structures were being developed.
And looking back on your time, is there something you're most proud of so far on your trustee years?
You know,
many things, maybe? Yeah.
I think so for me, the social justice, the policies that we've developed to really sort of start to break down barriers. So the change of policy 412, like that was huge for me because that came from a student, right? That was a student who came and had concerns. And just like, so the policy change, the fact that we do things, we're the first to do, we were the first to fly the pride and the trans flags. Those are huge for me. We have an advisory committee made up of students with disabilities, which is a first. And then currently, I got to sit. So my advocacy at the school district level also bleeds into the my advocacy at the provincial level, and so I was asked to sit on a working committee for BCSTA, which is the BC School Trustees Association, and the working paper hasn't come out, but the title of it is Improving Student Outcomes for Students with Disabilities and Diverse Abilities for Trustees. So because so many trustees don't understand the issues. So, yeah. So I have a lot. I could keep going. I have a list. But yeah, most of it is around just the structure around inclusion and really looking at shifting the boat a little bit so that we can be more inclusive.
Okay. What does it mean to you to have true inclusive education?
For me, it means that each child is part of a classroom, that each child is seen for who they are, and that unfortunately, we look at the medical model in order to get a diagnosis so that you can get the resources. But for me, true inclusion in the education system would be that every child's needs would be met regardless of whether or not they have a diagnosis or that they don't, and that every child is seen as being a valuable member of the of a classroom or of a school.
Do you think it's working?
No.
No. What are some of the things that stick out for you that you see are not working, that we're still not there yet?
I think we're still not there yet because we rely so heavily on the medical model. You might think that a person requires extra supports, but they may not get the resources they need because they don't bring in the funding.
Yes.
And so that to me is a struggle where the assumption is always on the child with the disability to be the one that has to comply with all of the structures and the rules. I think we do a disservice to inclusion because we don't actually educate the children and often the adults on how to be inclusive for the different needs of the students. Like if we really, I think we need to listen to the kids, right? So, and if you are a non-speaker or a minimal speaking student, you might have externalizing behaviors. But instead of listening to what that child is trying to tell you that their needs are, we are trying to get them to behave in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What can the district do to better support diversity and inclusion in the classrooms?
What can the district do? I'd like to see where there was more professional development for the people who work in the system, but also for the parents on understanding what diversity, equity, and inclusion looks like, but from the people with the lived or life experience, right? It's really easy to read a textbook and then think that you know something. The reality is 20 years ago when my kids started in the system, what was understood then, even 5 years ago, like it keeps evolving because we're learning from the people that are now getting a voice. I think that we need to be listening more to what the students are saying. So the students have an opportunity to tell us what is their challenges are, but then what do we do with that, right? What are the adults doing with that? But then also what are the adults' needs? So, being able to say, so if I was a teacher, and I've never been a teacher, but I've spent some time, not very much time, not like you guys in a classroom.
Yes.
But if I had a student that I didn't necessarily understand their needs, where do I go, right? Who's the expert? So if our teachers don't have the resources, then they can't help the kids. And if they can't help the kids, then the kids get frustrated. Like it's this revolving door. And really, I would love for there to be more opportunities for people to be able to reach out and have conversations with people with the lived experience. Like I feel lucky that I've had principals or teachers who've said to me, look, I think this child is autistic. Can you tell me, can you give me something to work with, right? Like we don't know if they are or they aren't. And it's really nice. It's really uplifting. But I wish that we could break down the barriers, right? Like that to me, the attitudinal barriers, I wish
the barriers more because of a lack of funding, or like what do you see is why those barriers are still there?
Well, lack of funding is one. And I think that's always going to be an issue and a challenge. I think that comes with inclusion, because inclusion is expensive, right? Like, there's no denying that. There's system barriers, there's environmental barriers, but there's also attitudinal barriers. And I think if we can reach through the attitudinal barriers, that would also break down, would help. And what I mean by that is, if we think that somebody, or I always go to the non-speakers, like, that's still my biggest want and desire, is that non-speakers are seen as people who can still learn, but just because they can't communicate, it's not their fault. I look at it as our fault, the adults, all adults, because we haven't figured out a way to help them. And so, but that takes time. It takes time, it takes money, it takes, but I think over 13 years, we can find a way to support and help. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Now, my next question, it's a big red flag, and I'll preface it. You and I first met when I was president of the North End Teachers Association, and so we came always to our conversations with a different lens. But I always really appreciated our discussions, and I think we learned to kind of respect what the other one was talking about. And this is to do with designations in the class and the number of students with designations. And we currently have limits to those number of students in each class. And do you think there should be a limit of those students? He asked rhetorically.
Rhetorically? No, I don't. I think when we put limits, well, first of all, that's a medical model. Right? And so, because there's lots of kids who don't have a diagnosis, who are then not part of your designated children, right? And so, for me, it's a social justice issue. It's a human rights issue. And I look back at the evolution of what education was. So if we go back to the beginning of time, it was only for men. It was only for men of an elite class. And evolved over time, and each group's had to sort of fight to get their right to be educated. I mean, we still have girls not being educated in different parts of the world. And so for me, this is just a group of children that require more supports and more different types of learning, right? It's no longer that we sit in rows. When I went to school, we sat in rows, and if you fell behind like I did, it was you sat at the back of the class and best of luck to you. I think so the answer is no, but I would like to see better ways of creating classrooms. So COVID for me was, I really hoped that when we came out of COVID, that we could look at restructuring our education system, because we found that there were a number of kids that really did well with that online learning. Lots of kids didn't. We had an opportunity to look at, to change the system, to change the model of the way we did education. And we didn't. We just went back into the same
with the limit. So would you agree that it does come from a good place, the reason for it? It's to make sure that those students get the supports they need. And if there are numbers that are just beyond the ability of that teacher to deal with, then there's something wrong with the system?
I understand the thinking, but if I'm the only child, so I look at it through the lens of the child. If I'm the only child with a disability in the classroom that has significant needs, and I don't see anybody else that looks like me or acts like me, then I feel isolated, right? And I think I'm going to turn it around a little bit. Okay. Because my kids went through the system where there weren't limits because the contract had been stripped, right? There was in my mind, from a parent, there was flexibility to group kids based around needs. And so I do remember there was teachers that could handle or had the ability and the skill set to be able to support, had more of those children, and I hate that kind of language, but had more children with disabilities in it than other teachers did. Yeah. I think if we could recreate the wheel, and if we didn't have caps, could we have team teaching, right? Where you have a teacher who's a regular ed teacher, if I could use that language, and a teacher who has specialized training. And so 2 teachers to a classroom, so that you have the ability to work with certain kids, and that blended model, I think, could work. But again, that's it's a hard thing to.
I mean, I think teachers would agree with you. Something's not working. Like for many of them, they feel like they're throwing a roll of duct tape. And just deal with this.
Yeah.
And it's on them all the time to deal with something that is getting more and more impossible to deal with and more challenging in terms of, and it's not just the number of designated students, it's just the whole system. And kids
whole system
kids are coming with more and more needs.
Absolutely.
And throw social media in there and the online world and so many issues now that right now, I do not think it's sustainable.
I think the system, the way we have it right now, doesn't work. And I do remember saying this years ago, that a third of the students, and this is like 10 years ago, a third of the students in the classroom have unique needs. And yet we're not, and we haven't done enough to keep up with the change of society and all of that. And so I think, let's go back even further. My question to you would be, do you think that teachers coming out of teaching college, and I'll use that as have the skill sets that they need to teach in today's classrooms versus do they?
Yeah, they probably do not.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's go back even further and let's look at how are we educating teachers so that they have different skills to teach in today's classroom. And then, let's bring in educational assistants. Do they have the skills to be able to support? And can they, there's so many nuances to this that you can't, there's no one blanket answer. And I think we have to look at everything, right from the education of teachers, education of educational assistants. For me, they should be paraprofessionals, not educational.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
But I think there's also a huge disservice when we have, other school districts that have programs where we'll teach you for 6 weeks or 4 weeks or 3 weeks, and now we're going to put you in and you're going to go and support some of our higher needs kids, and we wonder why people are getting hurt in school, right? There should be a higher level of expectations for, because I remember when North Vancouver was first doing educational assistance, and my neighbor's son has dyslexia, and they pulled in the crossing guard to come in and support him because they didn't have a support, and that was that was back then. But I really think that we're doing a disservice to our kids by not having that. So, sorry, I didn't mean to throw the questions back at you, but
feel free.
Yeah. Yes. I guess then what we're looking at, when we've talked about teachers and we've talked about our EA, our educational assistants, what support would you like to see from the government to kind of put this into place? What kind of supports do you think that should be coming from our government, from our provincial government to support our students?
I think that gosh, I'm. It's easy to throw the provincial government under the bus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the ones that tax us. They're the ones that give us the money. But I think my frustration lies with government is, we'll go back to 2001. When was the contract stripped?
That was around that time, yeah.
Yeah. So the government of the day stripped the contract. We had a generation and a half of kids that go through the school system. The BCTF won the court case. The language was put back in, and it was put back in as being 10 years old, right?
Yes.
It didn't get to evolve, right?
It didn't get to evolve because there wasn't. And so we're trying to make changes now. Government could increase funding. And I know this is always a thing. They can increase funding, but then what happens with that funding, right? Like, can they make more targeted funding towards kids with unique needs? Those that have higher needs, could they do that? Sure, they could. Could government ask the universities to create, change the teaching programs so that, teachers had better skills when they came out? And I'm not saying that they don't have great skills. They do. Could it be better? Sure.
Always.
Yeah.
Could they mandate standards for educational assistants and make them paraprofessionals and make them work, not make them work, that sounds bad, but have
a professional career so you have.
Well, yeah, so they're working at 35
yes.
and a half or 37 and a half is considered full-time, whatever the full-time hours are, so that they have that and that they keep getting professional development by, so they can keep up. The disability world is evolving so quickly that if you don't stay on top of it, you're out of date. So I'm not a big believer that just giving more money to a system is the best idea.
It's gonna fix it. Yeah.
Because I believe that everybody needs to be paid a salary to which allows them to be able to live in the communities, right? So I do believe in that. But I also believe that the system isn't working. And we can create roundtables, and I've seen this happen where we bring all the stakeholders together and we have conversations. Well, we have conversations for 2 or 3 years and nothing changes. I think the whole system has to be completely overhauled because it's based on a system that's over 100 years old. And it's not working. Today's society isn't allowing us to really be flexible, right? And so, I'm not answering the question because that is a heavy question.
It's so heavy. Yes. And the challenge is getting to that place where all the parties agree and stakeholders, where they have to kind of have the confidence to give something up, knowing that's the one thing, like having limits in the class. At least you go, that's something, I can see that.
Yeah.
That's allowing this class to provide that teacher with maybe the time they need to make that happen. So if you're going to say, let's change that, if it's something that people are going, I don't know, is that, it's a lot of trust, I guess, maybe. But also there has to be a willingness, I do think, to throw more money into the classroom to support that teacher, because I think a lot of teachers feel it's kind of top down and, everything gets decided up there. And if they get a few little pennies down into the classroom, they're supposed to just make it work.
Sure. And I understand that. I think because one of the things that we don't do well is actually listen to the kids, right? So when I was in school, integration was just starting. But let's, I don't know what it would be like to be in a school today with all of the things, but how do we uplift what the students are telling us and then saying, okay, how do we resource what the students are telling us, right? Like, let's have the students also guide us in what the needs are of today. I think the whole thing around the cell phone, the personal devices, was a good idea. But it was 10 years too late. We've lost a whole lot of kids and their parents to not understanding how addictive that was. So now we're trying to do it now. We always seem to be after.
It's all catch up.
But we're doing it all the time, right? We always seem to be wanting to do that catch up.
It's usually society now has a problem.
Yes.
School fix it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we have this great opportunity because with our new BC NDP government that was elected offered EAs in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so there's an opportunity to look at these EAs being put in the classroom. So what does an EA need? What are the requirements to help to support the EA, to help support the students because of this changing environment?
And it's a great point. There's a downside to also let's put EAs in the classroom. And the downside is we can't find EAs right now because we're not giving them full-time hours. It's not a profession, right? And the other thing too, where do you go from there, right? Like, so if you start, if an educational assistant is frontline work and they're doing that one-to-one or with groups, or where do you go? Like, you gain all these skills, then what?
Yes.
Right? Like, you can't move up in the organization. I mean, you can go back to school part-time and become a teacher. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing really to hold you in that because it's frontline work all the time. And so I think we really need to give them that professionalism
I completely agree with that. Absolutely. Right? No, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a key piece in all this.
And they need to be considered true
provides
partners.
A salary that you can live on, right? And that's your focus, not, I'm making my 5 hours a day and now I have to go to my other job after school, right? Just because I have to survive here.
Yeah, it's not even that. It's also when you have an EA in a classroom and you have that support. As a classroom teacher, you have that support and you go, thank you. Now, we all can move forward. Everybody can have some success and say, I have to leave now.
Well, and there's that. So originally when my kids were in the system, it was bell to bell, right? If they work bell to bell, like 9 to 3. So there was no opportunity for collaboration between the teacher and the EA, right? And so EAs were coming in and trying to make resources while they're supposed to be supporting students. And so I think, our school district anyways made a concerted effort to try and change that in order to attract people. But again, it's still not, I don't think, I would love to see us be able to say that we can offer full-time, but that means the government also needs to step up and pay and ensure that we have the money to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Because I do believe that the teachers and an educational assistant are partners. And if we can have true partnership where there is that teacher's the lead, but then they have that support, but the teacher knows that EA has the ability to help.
That requires the time, though, for them to be able to consult
Absolutely.
and decide that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, who's next?
Who's next?
I'm curious. Do you think the classroom is always the best situation, your regular public school classroom? Are there situations with students with designations where maybe a classroom that's designed just for that student is okay?
Oh dear.
I'm avoiding to say special schools, right? But because I think some parents do advocate for that too. Do they not?
Sure, parents do advocate for it.
Voice out there that.
So I think to me this is a slippery slope. All right, because so when my eldest started in the school system, he started in September. June they had closed the last resource room in elementary school. I think my fear is if we start to create specialized classrooms again, we're going to undo all the great work that we've done. I'm in the adult world now, right? My kids are adults. To me, an inclusive classroom whereby we have all kinds of kids, I want to. That's how we change society. So, my younger son has behaviors, and when he has behaviors in the community, people know, right? Today, compared to 20 years ago, where I was judged and yelled at and told that my child shouldn't be out in community, now if there's behaviors, I get people who come and say, what can we do to help? Tell us what we can do. That shift is huge. And so for me, if we want a more inclusive society, the only way there is through an inclusive education system. And we have private schools, right? We have independent schools. We have other ways of doing things. But when I see the kids in the community when I have my child, you can hear them whispering because they don't have the experience that our kids in our public school system have. So for me, an inclusive classroom and all that comes with it, both good and not so good, is going to change our society to be more inclusive.
Yeah. And the most positive change I've seen since I started teaching, which was 1990, was with the students themselves. Everyone else, all the other students, they are a far more accepting group than I've ever seen before. Yeah.
And they will become, and I'm seeing that in the young teachers. They're not as uncomfortable, right? And so I think we are evolving. I think we still don't understand kids that struggle with behavior. I think we're trying to get the kids to conform, to be when in my mind they're trying to make people understand their needs are not being met. So I think if we can provide different training for people, different understanding, and if I had to restructure, according to Cyndi, I would have every single school would have a sensory room, would have a place where if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I could go there but I'm not by myself. I'm not but other kids are there too, right? Like we all feel overwhelmed at times.
But we're in schools that were built in the 60s and 70s,
Absolutely.
right? So they don't have that, and that's a big part of it too.
Which is why I think that environmental barrier is creating barriers for that as well.
I mean, I know there are classrooms where a teacher does have, at least once or twice a week, sometimes every day, they have to take their class and leave that classroom because the policy now is more to leave the student if there's issues going on and they're throwing things or they're having a moment. Do you think that's a sign that's good that happens, or it's a sign that there's still something broken, that if a teacher has to leave the class, that maybe the EA support isn't there, or there's other things going on, or I think that's where a lot of teachers will find fault with the system, thinking now they're leaving, once a day because of this situation, and that takes away the education of the other kids in that moment.
Gosh, you guys.
That's been in my head as we've been talking.
Yes.
Should I go there? I'm going to go there.
You're going to go there.
Yeah.
So because I have experience, I have personal experience, I have a child who fit that criteria. And when you touch an individual that is heightened and try and get them to leave the classroom, the person or persons they're likely to be hurt, right? Asking the children to leave the classroom and leaving that person in that space actually helps to de-escalate them a lot faster. I get where you're going with this, and I think so the things that come to my mind would be, did that child just explode? Did you miss the signals in advance? Are you trying to, do you pick your battle, right?
Yeah.
I know my son, I can't speak to all the other children, but he had telltale signs, right?
Right.
And if he was stressed and you were trying to push him to comply, he's becoming more stressed. And then eventually he erupts, right? And it was through his experience, and the students were able to say to me, it was easier for them to leave than to watch him being pulled out of a classroom, because his peers, his friends, that was hard on them.
That would be very hard on them, for sure.
So having the teacher leave, let everybody, go, we're going to go in the library, actually was more beneficial because there isn't that trauma on both sides. It was, I tell this story, so when, we're not going down FSAs, but when the children were writing, they actually wrote about my son, two of the kids, and one of them was, they talked about my son in the classroom and how they stood up for him when adults were trying to tell him that, he needed to behave in a certain way, and they'd say, no, just leave him alone. He's okay. He'll calm down. Or they would say to him, you know what? If you don't do your work, you can't play with us at recess. So that's why I think we have to listen to the kids, right? And so is it ideal? No. Is it the best solution we have right now? Yes. If somebody can tell us a better way to do it where everybody's dignity is intact, then let's sit down and have that conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you.
But it's interesting because what I love about what you just said is then you're bringing in the students and the peers of students, and the idea is that they're supporting each other. I've, as a TTOC, I've been teacher on call, and I've gone into classrooms, and I always go in and say, okay, I say to the class, you're my teachers, right? Your teacher's done a great job of putting a day plan together, and I'm just putting my feet into your teacher's shoes, but you are my teachers. Can you tell me things that I need to know? And oftentimes, the students will share all those things about other students in the class, and they do it in a positive way. They're saying, and so I'll ask about one student and say, okay, well, this is the thing that our teacher does, or this is what we do to support this student in the classroom. And if anything, those are those opportunities to go, wow, that's inclusion and support. And when you see that, and for myself as a teacher, that is so heartwarming, right? It's just to see, yes, that's an opportunity to observe things that are working.
Yeah. Now, if it's not working and it's happening regularly, then we need to look at what the antecedents are. What is it about that classroom, right? Is it the smell? Is it they're visually overloaded? Is whatever it is, we need to be better detectives. And you know what? Sometimes asking their peers.
Yes.
Because their peers are seeing things that we don't see.
Yes. And we have a plan. We say, okay, this is the plan. Let's stick to it. And you say, and then it's tough sometimes to say, like, this plan's not working. We have to come up with a new plan, because that takes time and energy that oftentimes classroom teachers don't have. But the importance is, by putting that time and energy into creating a new plan, then we're supporting that student. We're supporting the students in the classroom and helping things to get better.
And if we had, so one of the things I liked about the older model, where we had, gosh, I can't even remember what the name of the LST and the LAC teacher, is the LST teacher had the ability to really get to know the children, right, and to help support that. And sometimes if we had sensory rooms. Like I remember for my kids, I was able to get the school to create a space where there was a swing or a punching bag where they could go and let off steam, or if the kids needed a quiet space because they were writing an exam and my son was being noisy, well, they could take his work and do it in another spot. But there was other children in there as well. So I think we have to stop trying to force everybody into the same mold. I get there's one teacher and up to 30 kids, but how can we do it in such a way that respects everybody? Mm-hmm. And we got to change our buildings.
So on that, well, let's end on a positive note.
Hey, this is all positive.
No, it is. And you've touched on many of these things, but I want you to go in the future and say, describe to us the perfect public education system that truly is inclusive. If you see it in action, you come back and you go, okay, this really is inclusive. What are you seeing?
I see. What do I see? So I'm going to go from the students up. Okay. So I see students, all kinds of students, in a classroom together. I don't see desks or rows. I see sensory stuff that students might need that's easily accessible. So I might, if there's, we'll just say 30. I know that's way over the limit, but we're just going to say 30. Let's go 25.
Okay.
No, let's go 20. 20. Classes 20. Of 20.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Classes of 20. Earphones for everybody, right? Different kinds of chairs. So maybe I come to school and I need a wiggly chair or I need a hard chair. Classrooms are designed for what the children's needs are, right? We have we have teachers who've had different types of education training out of universities. We have co-teaching when there's a need, right? Maybe it's through academics. Maybe it's I'd like to see schools to be all parts of schools to be educational opportunities. So, why can't we look at, let's talk about our gifted kids. So we have kids that are highly gifted in math. So can we create a math program where kids are getting their math, but they're struggling in LAC? Mm-hmm. And if we don't necessarily look at age, because we know today that there are kids, like just because you're 5, you can be 5 and have a birthday in January and be 5 and have a birthday in December. And that year, could we look at different ways of providing education based on ability and based on need as opposed to based on age? That would be another thing for me. Schools have to be all torn down and rebuilt for today. So you might have quiet rooms, more acoustically friendly, sensory rooms in all of the schools, and that includes high schools. Like we make an assumption that these kids who have sensory needs don't need it in high school. So there's no swings in high school. There's no things that we use all the time, right? So let's look at the continuum of students, but the continuum of need. And why should a high school be a whole lot different than an elementary school? Right? So for me, I want to see inclusive education will be about need. Right? And I had a son who was gifted in math. And he had peers that were gifted in math. And it was hard to get his math education needs met. So could we not have created – I used to use math a lot, but I also know we're not we all don't fit into the same box.
No.
Right? We don't.
Yeah.
And so some people are super highly academic, others are not. I'm a kinesthetic learner, and yet there was no kinesthetic learning. There still really isn't kinesthetic learning. Can we learn math through different means? So if I'm struggling, can I look at I look at Mountainside. Why do we have just Mountainside? Why can't Mountainside be part of our regular school system where we're doing more hands-on? There's just so many different ways of providing education. We need to get out of the box.
Yeah.
We need to get out of the box. And,
Yeah.
I'm not answering that question
No,
well
you
because...
really did. You really did.
I did. I loved the way you discussed about the changes in the rooms, the changes in the schools, and tearing the schools down to create spaces that aren't there right now. I mean, there are many schools right now that they're really old, and they're overcrowded, and there's hardly any space for the students themselves.
Yeah.
And so that has to be rethought. So
Yeah.
I loved what you said.
Thank you.
And thank you for this. You've talked about listening to the students, and a big point of our podcast is that too many of us are in our bubbles and we don't listen to each other anymore. So we really appreciate this chance to listen to you and to share this conversation. Thank you.
Oh my, you gave me some hard questions, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was an excellent interview, I thought.
Yes, I really enjoyed the perspective that Cyndi brought for us. I know that as a classroom teacher, I have a specific lens from which I look through things. I try to look in other directions, but just hearing her perspective and hearing what she discussed, it just made me think. In fact, the whole purpose of this podcast is to get other people to think and to listen to others.
Yeah, we're in our separate bubbles and we often don't listen to each other. And we're trying to bring those bubbles together so that we hear and together build a better system. And it's not always easy. And there are things people will agree with, things they'll disagree with. But that's what we need to do, not be off in places that we're going, well, this is my opinion. I don't want to hear your opinion. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. That wraps up another episode of After the Bell.
That was great. We could make a career out of this, you know.
I think we should. This podcast is organic, taking shape with each episode. Building resiliency for teachers everywhere.
That sounds great.
And our website is stuntbrothers.ca.
That's stuntbrothers.ca.
We will chat again.
After the bell.